Raiders of the Lost Ark 1981 wasn't just an adventure movie, it was a game-changer for cinema. Directed by Steven Spielberg and produced by George Lucas, it introduced the world to Indiana Jones, the whip-cracking archaeologist who became an icon. But behind the thrilling stunts and unforgettable moments lies a treasure chest of strange, surprising, and downright bizarre stories from production. From on-set accidents to unscripted moments that became legendary, the making of this classic film was just as wild as Indy's adventures. Today, let's uncover weird facts about Raiders of the Lost Ark you never knew. Indiana Jones was almost played by Tom Selleck. Believe it or not, Harrison Ford wasn't the first choice to play Indiana Jones. The role was initially offered to Tom Selleck, who even screen tested with the fedora and whip. Unfortunately, Selleck was under contract for the TV show Magnum P.I., which prevented him from taking the part. When Spielberg pushed for Ford, Lucas reluctantly agreed, even though he didn't want to reuse an actor from Star Wars. Weirdly enough, Selleck's missed opportunity became Ford's career-defining role, cementing him as one of cinema's greatest action heroes. The boulder scene was real. One of the film's most famous sequences is the giant boulder chase at the beginning. Many assume it was a special effect, but it wasn't. The massive fiberglass boulder, weighing around 300 pounds, was real and rolled down a track toward Harrison Ford multiple times. Ford performed the stunt himself, running just ahead of the boulder as it thundered behind him. Spielberg filmed the sequence from different angles, making it appear even more dangerous. The weird part? Ford was inches away from serious injury, but the authenticity made it one of the most iconic scenes in movie history. The snake scene was a nightmare. In the Well of Souls sequence, Indiana Jones comes face to face with thousands of slithering snakes. What many don't know is that the production team initially gathered around 20 snakes, but Spielberg felt it wasn't enough. To make the pit look more terrifying, they brought in over 70 snakes. Unfortunately, some were venomous, creating real danger for the cast and crew. The weirdest part? A terrified assistant director had to stand on a ladder, shaking handfuls of snakes onto the floor to keep the pit crawling. Even Spielberg admitted the scene was one of the most nerve-wracking to shoot. Harrison Ford injured his knee in Tunisia. During filming in Tunisia, Ford tore a ligament in his knee while performing a stunt. With no time for proper medical treatment, he continued filming through the pain. In fact, Ford famously asked the local doctor for a quick solution, and the doctor injected him with painkillers on the spot. Instead of resting, Ford pushed through grueling action sequences, including fight scenes and desert chases. The weird twist? His injury actually added grit to his performance, making Indy appear more rugged and weary traits that became essential to the character's charm. The famous sword scene was improvised. One of the funniest moments in Raiders of the Lost Ark happens when a swordsman dramatically shows off his weapon, only for Indy to casually shoot him. Originally, the scene was supposed to be an elaborate sword versus whip fight, but Harrison Ford was suffering from food poisoning that day and didn't have the energy for a lengthy stunt sequence. Instead, Ford suggested simply pulling out his gun and ending the fight instantly. Spielberg loved the idea and filmed it. The weird part? This unscripted change became one of the most beloved and iconic moments in movie history. R2-D2 and C-3PO make a cameo. George Lucas couldn't resist sneaking in references to Star Wars. If you look closely during the Well of Souls sequence, you'll spot hieroglyphics on the walls that include carvings of R2-D2 and C-3PO. The detail is so small that many fans didn't notice it until years later. This Easter egg is one of those weird crossovers that blends Lucas's two franchises in a clever way. It also adds to the film's sense of fun, reminding audiences that Spielberg and Lucas loved playing with their cinematic worlds, leaving hidden treasures for eagle-eyed viewers to discover. Steven Spielberg directed the film quickly. Spielberg had just finished 1941, a film that went over budget and schedule, so he was determined not to repeat the mistake. For Raiders of the Lost Ark, he filmed with remarkable speed, often using the first take of scenes to save time. The entire movie was shot in just 73 days, an impressive feat considering the number of action sequences, stunts, and exotic locations. The weird part? Spielberg's fast-paced shooting style gave the film a raw, energetic feel that perfectly matched Indiana Jones' adventurous spirit, proving sometimes less time can create cinematic gold. Real tarantulas were used on set. In the scene where Indy's companion, Satipo, finds his back covered in tarantulas, the spiders were completely real. The filmmakers placed dozens of live tarantulas on actor Alfred Molina, who was making his film debut. However, the spiders initially stayed still, ruining the effect. To get them moving, the crew added a large female tarantula, which made the males start crawling. The weird part? Molina stayed perfectly calm while covered in creepy crawlers, proving himself as a true professional in his very first movie role. Not a bad way to start a Hollywood career if you can handle spiders. The film was inspired by old adventure serials. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg wanted to create a modern version of the 1930s and 1940s adventure serials they loved as kids. These old films often featured treasure hunts, exotic settings, and cliffhanger endings. Lucas and Spielberg decided to take that formula and elevate it with bigger budgets, better effects, and a charismatic hero. The weird part is how faithfully Raiders of the Lost Ark captured that spirit while also reinventing it for a new generation. The film became both a tribute and a reinvention, turning Indiana Jones into a legend while honoring the past. The Ark's power was created with practical effects. The climactic scene where the Ark of the Covenant unleashes its deadly power is one of the most chilling in cinema. What's fascinating is that the effects were largely practical. For example, melting faces were created using wax sculptures filmed with heat lamp. Ghostly spirits were made using water tanks, miniatures, and clever lighting. The weirdest part? These old-school techniques still hold up decades later. Even in the age of CGI, Spielberg's creative use of practical effects gave the scene a haunting, otherworldly quality that remains unforgettable and continues to terrify audiences today.